And I hope we have once again reminded people that man is not free unless government is limited. There's a clear cause and effect here that is as neat and predictable as a law of physics. As government expands, liberty contracts.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first.
The Liberty Podcast is brought to you by Proven Arms and Outfitters, specializing in rifles, pistols, tactical gear, and more. Learn more at ProvenOutfitters.com.
Hey, welcome back to the Liberty Podcast. It is the 26th day of September, 2024. Thank you for finding us once again in our undisclosed studio here beneath the pines. You'll see I have my beautiful eagle over my shoulder today. Wisconsin Metal Art produces these beautiful products. Check them out online. Wisconsin Metal Art, father and son team. They make beautiful patriotic art for your home and office. Home and office. Guess where I went last weekend, ladies and gentlemen? That's right. The Trump Winery outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. What a beautiful setting that is. 1,200 acres. Just spectacular. And of course, as you might imagine, it's a Trump property, first class all the way. Beautiful main building on the top of a hill with outdoor seating overlooking this beautiful valley. And of course, lots of award-winning wine. No whining in the Trump campaign, but plenty of delicious and very premium vino. Trump Winery. Check it out if you're in Central Virginia. Well, you know, ladies and gentlemen, we're 20 days by the time you see this from the start of early voting in North Carolina on October 17th. And, well, let's just say that there's never a dull moment. Now, interestingly enough, CNN thought that they were going to pull off the political smear job of the year by revealing alleged online activity by Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson more than 10 years ago. In fact, closer to 15 years ago, when he was a younger man out of politics completely. Certainly never contemplated becoming lieutenant governor or running for governor as he is now, and he remains in the race as he should. We can't just bow whenever a left-wing Marxist corrupt news organization, quote unquote, like CNN, attempts to interfere with the outcome of an election. And that's exactly what they're doing here. Make no mistake about that. Make no mistake about it. And it only gets worse because everyone is piling on now. All these other news organizations are reporting what CNN has reported without trying in the least to verify anything about his alleged activity on several pornographic adult websites way back between 2008 and 12. Many of them, lewd comments, racist, you might say. But again, CNN has not shown us any of the actual screenshots. They have only insinuated that they exist. And they have not produced them. I think that is political, journalistic negligence, malfeasance of the highest form. So today, what's the next natural step here? First of all, they try to bring down Mark Robinson, who's running against a virulent little Marxist named Josh Stein, who is the sitting North Carolina Attorney General. And what a rap sheet he has in his role as a public servant. Please give me a break. But now the insinuation by the Wall Street Journal is that the Robinson situation, created not by Robinson, but by CNN, is now injecting chaos into the presidential race. front page of the Wall Street Journal today. The deciding factor in the crucial swing state of North Carolina could be the black, reportedly pro-slavery Republican gubernatorial candidate. Why do they use that word, gubernatorial? I mean, Roy Cooper's a goober, that's for sure. Now, the headline says that it's injected chaos, but when you read through the story, there's not one sliver of evidence that it has affected Trump's polling in North Carolina, that has affected his ground game in North Carolina. None of it. Not one of it. And yet, the Wall Street Journal puts this junk on the front page of their paper today, 26 September. What's buried on page 3 of the A section? The full report from yesterday's Senate investigation hearing, in which they revealed all of the many ways in which the Secret Service dropped the ball 10 ways to Sunday in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, nearly costing Donald Trump his life. It wasn't just a little sloppiness. It was deep-rooted negligence, deep-rooted dysfunction within the Secret Service and, by extension, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's on page 3. Mark Robinson is on page 1. You got to watch this stuff very closely, and you can't trust any news organizations anymore, not even the once kind of centrist Wall Street Journal, believe it or not. Now, what say we about Mark Robinson? What should we do about Mark Robinson? Well, these are what my instincts tell me. He is not a politician who has choreographed every step of his adult life toward amassing power. That is a positive. That means he is not Kamala Harris. He is not Roy Cooper. He is not Josh Stein. Robinson is considered a fairy tale story. We all know the story, dating back to his appearance at a Greensboro City Council meeting in 2018. He was a working class citizen who took on the establishment. There are many such citizens, but when you have the vocabulary and the lung capacity to rise up, you get noticed. And noticed he was. He was then swept into prominence by power brokers who salivated over the prospect of a black Republican running for lieutenant governor. This was a cunning strategy because in North Carolina, the lieutenant governor's office is considered a rather benign position. Therefore, it was the perfect race in which to test Robinson's electability, and electable he was. So what do you do in this moment when you are Mark Robinson and they tell you should run for lieutenant governor, that you can win? Well, you feel like a lottery winner, I'm sure, but do you interrupt the power brokers in these meetings to inform them that a past business venture with your wife ended up a tad sideways? Do you blurt out that when you were young and in love with your then girlfriend, now wife, that a child was conceived? Do you come clean that an abortion was performed? Even now, years later, your Christian faith instructs that abortion is murder? Here is what you can do. You and I, we can fight like hell. We can remind the public and the salivating media that candidates for public office often come from imperfect pasts. Boy, do they ever. I could start naming them, but we'd be here all day. Remember this. Russian collusion aided and abetted Trump on his way to winning the White House. Misinformation and disinformation was at the heart of opposition to COVID-19 lockdowns and mandates. But all of it was later debunked. Trump was not aided by collusion, and misinformation and disinformation was not involved in combating COVID-19 tyranny. It was all now proven to be correct. Vaccinations, not safe and effective. Masks don't work. Social distancing, nonsense. There is an American political icon who would advise that we rush to draft Mark Robinson's political obituary. His name is Ronald Reagan. The media said he was an intellectual lightweight, compromised by communists. Before we give up on Mark Robinson and allow a virulent Marxist to become North Carolina's governor, why don't we embrace what positive things Robinson can achieve to keep the state red and on a path toward prosperity in a state where we will continue to defy woke and government tyranny? with Robinson in the governor's mansion, backed by Hal Weatherman as a lieutenant governor and Dan Bishop as attorney general, and supermajorities in the General Assembly, our state's potential is boundless. So here's what to do about Mark Robinson. Elect him. Starting on October 17th, early voting. 20 days by the time you see this. 20 days. It's kind of hard to believe, isn't it? I mentioned Josh Stein. Now, CNN can make up stuff about Mark Robinson on adult porn sites, but we've got actual proof of the negligence of Josh Stein as an elected official. When 22 attorneys general threatened fraud enforcement against the American Academy of Pediatrics due to their continued false promotion of puberty blockers, guess which attorney general was not among the 22? That would be Josh Stein. So the American Academy of Pediatrics was telling parents and medical experts that puberty blockers could be reversed in children. Nonsense. But you didn't see Stein fighting that fight to save the kids, did you? When Title IX was hijacked by the Biden regime, 15 attorneys generals sought injunctive relief against the new provisions of Title IX, which involve gender and gender expression, nothing to do with women's equality in sports. Did Josh Stein join the 15? No, of course he didn't. No, he didn't. And he spent years, literally years, as Attorney General working to derail the requirement that you and I present a photo ID when we vote. And only last spring in the primary did that finally become the rule of law. But if Josh Stein had had anything to say about it, we'd still be able to vote without an ID. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Okay, let's keep going, because today, in a little while, we're going to be joined by a friend of mine and a great patriot from North Carolina, a native of Oklahoma, a longtime election integrity attorney. Her name is Cleta Mitchell. You might recall that she was on the front lines fighting for Donald Trump after the 2020 election, trying to undo the fraud that beset the Georgia election outcome. She's been working ever since then as part of the Conservative Partnership Institute in Washington, heading up the Election Integrity Network. She will join us later in this podcast to tell us what's going on the battle lines to keep our elections fair and free this coming fall. She's the expert on this topic, and she's joining us, so stick around for that coming up just a little later on. You know what rhymes with Coke? Turns out it's woke. Now, some genius in the Coca-Cola marketing department decided that it would be a cute little promotion to allow consumers to customize their own cans of Coke. So you could order a Coca-Cola can or a six-pack or a case with happy birthday greetings to a friend or loved one on the can for a party, for example, or for a graduation event or for a wedding. Whatever you needed your personalized Coca-Cola can for, they were going to let you do that. It sounded like a pretty good idea, actually. But when somebody with a brain in their head decided to try personalizing their can, Trump Vance 2024, Make America Great Again, guess what the little Coca-Cola online promotion told them? Can't do that. Can't have a can that says Trump Vance 2024. Then the same person tried, thank you, Jesus. No Jesus on your Coke cans. All right, what if I try Harris Walls 2024? No problem. That can be on your Coke can. So Coke woke is a joke, and now they've been caught, and the campaign has been dialed back, and now there's all kinds of restrictions on what you can put on your can. So it seems to me that whoever created the original algorithm for the Coke can should be canned ASAP. Don't you think? I think so. I think so. You know what a continuing resolution is, ladies and gentlemen? Hey, where did that go? There it is. It's hiding in there, my little pocket square. Very patriotic, red, white, and blue job there, huh? Nice. You know what a continuing resolution is? It's really called a bailout. It's when the House suspends the rules of normal order and votes to fund the government with money we don't have in order to keep it from shutting down. Well, they did that yesterday in Washington, and more than 380 members of Congress voted for it. Only about 80 voted against it. And guess how many members of the North Carolina delegation in Washington from our 14 congressional districts, guess how many of our congressmen voted against this runaway government spending to quote unquote avert a government shutdown, which is nonsense? One man, Dan Bishop of the 8th Congressional District, who is now running for Attorney General in North Carolina. One man stood in the breach and said, we're not doing this anymore. In this year alone, we have spent $1.9 trillion more than we have received in federal revenue. $1.9 trillion, adding to an already bloated $35 trillion federal debt. When that bomb detonates, it's going to be like Hiroshima financially in this country. Our own Richard Hudson, our representative who represents Moore County in the 9th Congressional, joined 13 others in voting yes, let's spend more money we don't have to keep the government open. What does that even mean? They've never been able to explain it, except every time a shutdown is looming and we see the list of what doesn't shut down when the government shuts down, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Social Security payments, they continue. Medicaid payments, they continue. It all continues. A few monuments and state parks federal parks shut down. That's it. So what? You can't go to the Grand Canyon for a week. Who cares? We're dying, we're drowning in our own debt. And it's getting worse with each passing moment, each passing second on the clock, ticking toward the debt bomb detonation. It's inevitable at the rate we're going. Hate to say it. True. Now, remember Springfield, Ohio? And remember how the citizens there went to a council meeting and said, we've got to do something about the 20,000 Haitian immigrants who have flooded into our town? This has got to stop. Remember that? And then it got a little sideways because there was this discussion about whether or not the Haitians were eating fish and ducks out of the ponds in the parks in Springfield, Ohio, whether they were snatching pets and fricasseeing them for dinner. And that was turned by the media into a whole situation where they tried to claim hoax. None of it's happening. It's all nonsense. It's all Republican spin. Well, it turns out that we should have been paying more attention to the real problem in Springfield, Ohio. And who better to bring that to our attention than the police chief of the adjoining town of Tremont City. He says that Springfield, Ohio has fallen into absolute turmoil since the arrival of 20,000 Haitian nationals. Blaze News has gone to Tremont City, Ohio, located approximately 8 miles from Springfield, to speak with local officials on the impact of these Haitian arrivals. The police chief said, you've got a city that's in absolute turmoil. Everybody's against everybody. This police chief says that one of the most significant concerns is the increase in traffic accidents caused by Haitian drivers who are not licensed. Of course they're not, but I bet they can register to vote. What do you bet? He told Blaze News that Tremont City law enforcement is doing everything possible to crack down on the potentially deadly crashes, but noted that Springfield appears to be protecting Haitians from facing any real consequences for reckless driving. Says the police chief from Tremont City. People that shouldn't be driving, they're out there and they're allowing them to drive. They're allowing them to drive. Duncan speculated that Springfield may be softening or avoiding reckless driving consequences for Haitians to protect them from deportation. If you get 2 misdemeanors, you are subject to be deported, he told Blaze News. But instead, he says that access to Springfield's police radio frequency to his officers has been cut off since the city started attracting national attention. Really? When asked why he believes the city has made it hard to communicate, Police Chief Duncan of Tremont City speculated that the Springfield police turned off the ability for others to hear their radio to obstruct any outside monitoring of their actions, and thereby keeping them from having to answer for their actions, or in this case, inaction against reckless driving by Haitians. And there are photos of these accidents. He's not making it up. One of them was involved a parked car being hit by a Haitian driving erratically on the streets and running into a parked vehicle. So it's out there. Do a little research for the love of Pete. All right, ladies and gentlemen, in just a moment, we're going to be joined by Cleta Mitchell for an in-depth analysis of the state of election integrity as we go into this most pivotal of all elections in the history of our country. She's coming right up. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you on the backside of that interview with Cleta. Well, as advertised, we are joined now by Cleta Mitchell, who is one of the foremost election integrity champions in this country, the founder of the Election Integrity Network, and a very important advocate for keeping an eye on all the nefarious things that the other side attempts to do to compromise the outcome of elections up and down the ballot in this country. Cleta, thank you very much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Steve. I appreciate it.
So first of all, let's talk about the big picture, how we should be feeling going into this election cycle about where we are in terms of having improved the robustness of our ability to stop fraud, to stop activist judges from changing the rules on us as they did in 2020. I believe RNC Chair Michael Whatley the other day said that there are many, many lawsuits in play right now as we speak, some of which are bearing fruit. But let's talk a little bit about the national scenario, and then we'll turn our attention to North Carolina, and specifically the North Carolina Election Integrity Team, also known as EnSite. So tell us where we are going into this pivotal election cycle.
Well, I appreciate it, Steve. Look, I mean, I think it's really important for people to understand that we are light years ahead today of where we were this time 4 years ago going into the presidential election. In fact, I actually had a conversation with Mark Meadows in July of 2020 when he was chief of staff to President Trump at the White House. And I knew Mark, he's a friend of mine and had been a client before he went into the White House. And I asked him, Mark, what are you all doing to prepare for the post-election? And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you remember what happened in 2000 in Florida? Well, it's going to happen it's going to happen in November, and it's not going to be one state. It's going to be 6 to 8 states. Well, that's about exactly what it was. And I suggested they needed to be ready. They need to have teams of lawyers, and you couldn't wait till the day after the election to start worrying about it. He had me talk to the president. I talked to President Trump, and I said I would be willing to work on this. And that was the end of August of 2020. And I said, it's already late, and but we need to get going. He said, great. Well, I'll tell Mark Meadows and we'll talk to the campaign and let's get going. And I didn't ever hear from him until the day after the election.
Oh boy.
And I thought, gosh, when Mark Meadows called me and asked me to go to Georgia, I wanted to say, this is exactly what I told you not to do. Don't wait till the day after the election. Anyway, but so fast forward, I think that one of the things, a silver lining, if you can find any silver lining after 2020, is that people all over this country all of a sudden realized they saw the election process and they saw what they thought were problems that they never knew they had. It's almost like there are termites eating your house and you don't know it, and you know it until the whole side of the house falls down. And then you go, oh gosh, now we know. And so what happened was that there was just all this energy and people coming out of the woodwork and saying, something's wrong here, we need to get involved. And I wanted to make sure that we could channel that energy and get people to be doing things that actually would make a difference in their states, in their home communities, because remember, all voting is local. That's where the voting takes place. And so that's why I started the Election Integrity Network. I authored something called the Citizens Guide to Building an Election Integrity Infrastructure, and that's available for free. You can go to the website for the Election Integrity Network, which is www.whoscounting.us, and download that for free. And we provided a lot of tools and resources, videos, training videos for people to be able to know what they need to do in their home states. And I've said this many times, that we never realized, I don't think, I did. I've been an election lawyer for decades. And so I've been in this business and watching this pretty closely. And I've done a lot of time at county election boards in various states. But it's up to citizens to have oversight of their government. And too often, I think that we have not, just as parents did not realize the importance of their role and their oversight and involvement and engagement with their local school boards, with what books are, the materials are going into the kids' libraries. And now that people have become aware, the sleeping giant has been awakened, both with parents and school boards, but also with citizens and the election process. So we now have, you want to ask for good news, I will just tell you that in the Election Integrity Network, we have, I want to say 30 states that have coalitions and have citizens from all over the state involved in what's going on in the election offices in their state. They know the state election officials. They know whether they've got a rule of law election office or one that is intent upon ignoring the law. And we have a lot of election officials like that. And we have just thousands of people who are just so knowledgeable and have identified the problems. Have we fixed all the problems? No, but I think we know what they are. I think we know what we're looking for. And so in that regard, I would say that we are far, far ahead of where we were 4 years ago. And I think, two big problems that we identified. I literally sort of woke up in January this year and thought, wait a minute, this is how they're going to reelect that vegetable in chief in the White House. They're going to get all these illegals registered and voting. So I started this effort. Another thing I founded, which was the Only Citizens Vote Coalition. And we have, and I would encourage people to go to the website, www.onlycitizensvotecoalition.com. And we have a ton of resources for people to download and use in their communities, signs they can print both in Spanish and in English. They can make flyers, resolutions to take to city councils, to town clerks, if that's who runs your election, to county election boards, county commissioners, to say, what are we doing in our county to make sure that non-citizens are not on our voter rolls and that they are not being allowed to register and vote. And so instructions, meeting with the local Department of Motor Vehicles agencies and finding out what are you doing to make sure your staff isn't registering non-citizens to vote, because that is where a lot of the voter registration takes place. But that's all. The success of the election depends on the level of involvement and engagement by volunteers in every county in the country. That's what it boils down to. So I'd say we're way ahead of where we were 4 years ago. We haven't fixed all the problems, but at least we know what they are and we're watching. That's a big step forward.
Huge. Yeah, absolutely. So in North Carolina, I was told the other day that since 2020, about 200,000 new residents have come to our state.
Oh, wow.
And so depending on how you look at it, that's either a lot of low-hanging fruit to register to vote and to motivate to vote, or it's a lot of opportunities to play fast and loose with how these people are registered. In other words, we hear sometimes about people registering for a driver's license in a new state when they've moved, and they are sort of unknowingly registered to vote as a Democrat, and they don't even know it. I don't know if that's a problem in North Carolina, but
I can tell you something about that.
Okay.
Because what I think has happened in some places and a number of places is what they do is they may register you as an unaffiliated voter, even if you, and in fact, I talked with our state senator about this about a year ago, because he's the chairman in the state senate of the transportation committee. And of course, the Department of Motor Vehicles is under the Department of Transportation. And I called to tell him that I was worried about that very thing, that when people were going to renew their registration or whatever, that they were getting removed from the Republican Party, because I'd had reports of that, and being automatically re-enrolled as an unaffiliated. Right. And the senator said to me, it just happened to him, and that he just happened to look at the form that they'd sent him. They brought it in. He kind of put it on his desk and didn't really look at his new driver's license at all, and knew what they said. And he looked at it, and they had re-registered him as an unaffiliated, which he happened to see 2 weeks before filing. He would not have been able to file for re-election because he wasn't registered in the party. So he got him to change it. But that was happening. You wouldn't even notice it necessarily in North Carolina, because for some unknown reason, we allow in North Carolina, people who are unaffiliated can choose to vote in either the Democrat or the Republican primary. I believe in closed primaries. Yeah. And but I know in Florida, that was happening to people in Florida, and they were showing up to vote in the Republican primary, because they do have a closed primary. Oh, you can't vote. And so it has happened. Those glitches have happened all over the country.
So I think the strategy among Republicans this time around is to encourage people to get out and vote early, sort of bank their vote, and then direct all of their energy in the remaining period of early voting toward registering those in your sphere of influence, your relatives, your coworkers, your churchgoers, and doing everything you can to drive voters to the polls. So can we be confident that if I go on October 17th, or the first day of early voting, and cast a ballot, that for the next 2 weeks plus, can I be confident that my ballot is going to be secure?
Yes, I think you can. And I think I'm a lot more confident of that than of telling you to put your ballot in the mail. I just say to people, if you won the lottery, you won $1 million in the lottery, or $1,000 in the lottery, would you put your winning ticket in the mail? I don't think so. I mean, you would take it and hand deliver it. And right. I absolutely do not trust, and there have been lots of articles written recently that postal authorities have been saying we cannot guarantee the delivery of the mail timely, we'll do our best, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, we have been saying, those of us in the Election Integrity Network, VIP 1, vote in person, first day, claim your ballot, claim your vote, then nobody else can come and vote in your name. And we saw so many instances in 2020. I thought it was just Georgia, but it was all over the country, where people would show up on election day to vote, only to be told, oh, Mrs. Smith, this says you've already voted, when they hadn't. And if that happens to you, your vote is not going to count. They'll let you vote a provisional ballot, but how do you prove a negative? How do you prove that wasn't me? Right. That wasn't me that turned in a ballot in my name. So right. Yeah, I'm a big believer. Vote in person, very first day, but VIP 1.
So we mentioned earlier the Insight, North Carolina Election Integrity Team. What has that organization done to safeguard our votes in the coming election? I mean, should we be feeling good about election integrity in North Carolina in the weeks ahead?
I will tell you that if you care about election integrity in North Carolina or anywhere, but I know for a fact, if you care about it in North Carolina, you need to go to the website, www.nceit.org, nceit.org, sign up, get trained, become an election observer, a poll observer, a poll watcher. Do that. That's what you should do, is vote the first day in person and then spend the rest of that time getting other people to vote. Honestly, if you want people to register, you got to get them registered as soon as possible. There is same-day registration and early voting in North Carolina, which I hate, but that is the law until we can get it changed. But get people to vote, but you should be an observer. And there are so many opportunities for volunteer efforts to oversee the elections. One of the things that Insight is doing is they have studied the voter rolls there. I think I heard Jim Womack, who's the chairman, I think I heard him say that they've got 1,800 volunteers who have been committed to identifying suspicious registrations, and they have not been able to get those removed, but they're watching to see if any of those people try to vote, and to have, there is a statutory provision in North Carolina law where a registered voter, can challenge a vote by another voter whose registration is suspicious. So because the counties, and at the direction of the Democrat-controlled state election board, have refused to remove bad registrations, now they're watching. So they have the suspicious voter list. And I just think it's really important for people to get involved. I mean, imagine if Insight could double the number of people watching every single thing, being an observer, watching for these suspicious voters, making sure that that the process is being carried out in a manner that is consistent with North Carolina law. And then after this election is over, and hopefully we win, then I think it's real important for people to talk to their legislators in North Carolina, because we have got to get some changes in our North Carolina statutes. We have to get some changes.
One last thing before we go, the other component of this is, for example, you hear a lot about Georgia and how dirty their voter rolls are. They're chock full of suspicious registered voters who are deceased, who have moved away, who are not citizens, whatever it is. Then by contrast, you hear about, I believe it was your home state of Oklahoma, where they recently cleansed the rolls like unbelievably to the tune of hundreds of thousands of names.
400,000, this just last week.
Yeah. So where do we fall in North Carolina between the extreme of Georgia on the dirty roll side and Oklahoma on the cleansed rolls?
Well, I hate to tell you this, but in North Carolina, because of research performed by volunteers looking at every registered voter in North Carolina, they identified nearly 400,000 registrations in North Carolina who had none of the required identifying information. Under the federal law, the Help America Vote Act, in order for a person to be added to the voter rolls, that applicant must provide a driver's license of the state where he or she is trying to register, along with, and if they don't have that, then the last 4 digits of the Social Security number. And if they don't have that, unfortunately, the law allows, or a utility bill, etc. Well, there were 400,000 registrations in North Carolina, and this was just unveiled about 3 months ago, that did not have either. That didn't have any of the required identifying verified information. So these citizens filed a complaint, and the North Carolina State Board of Elections admitted that they had enrolled as registered all these people without the required verification. And now then the state Republican Party has sued the North Carolina State Board of Elections. Now their suit only alleges approximately 200,000, about half of the ones identified by the citizens group, but it's still 200,000 registrations in North Carolina that are not verified. So I would just tell you that every state has a long way to go. What I really appreciate about what my home state of Oklahoma did, as opposed to my adopted state of North Carolina, is that the governor of the state got the legislature passed a law that required the state election board in every county to compare the data on the voter registration rolls with health department vital records on deceased people, with the with the Department of Motor Vehicle citizenship data, and to remove and to look at all the data on who had moved and who had not. And really, that directive, that decision by the governor and the legislature saying we're going to do something about this before November, it resulted in identifying and removing over 400,000 bad registrations. I wish we could clone that process in every state.
Well, perhaps that day will come.
Perhaps.
That's why we should vote in this election for sure. Up
Absolutely.
and down the ballot. Both sides of the ballot, please.
Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
and all the way down. Every race is very important.
Absolutely. Well, we know that now, especially with what our school boards have become, these little Marxist operations under our noses. So yeah, it's very important.
It's true. It's true.
Not here in Moore
It's
County,
true.
thankfully, but in
No, but but they run into the headwinds of every. I noticed. I'll just close with this. I just totally off topic, but I was fascinated a few weeks ago when the Pilot did a front page story about the issue of whether or not the Moore County schools were going to comply with the Biden-Harris administration's directive on Title IX, and it went through the entire article and debate, and never once mentioned that the reason that people are upset about the directive from the Biden-Harris administration is because it requires schools to allow boys and girls restrooms and boys and girls sports, and that in and of itself is enough to make a parent be furious and be wanting to fight back. And that article never mentioned that.
Yes,
It's crazy.
Yes, they even introduced gender expression into the new Title IX. So
Of course.
you can change your expression from one day to the next too.
Right. Oh, right. It doesn't have to be consistent.
Very convenient.
Crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much, Cleta, for joining us today with your insights and your insights. And and thank you for all the work you do to protect our vote going forward. You have once again joined us at the Liberty Podcast, and we'll see you again right here next time.